Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here today at Onondaga Community College for this most historic occasion. On behalf of the college, as well as trustees Steve Aiello and Melanie Littlejohn, who are here with us this afternoon, as well as many of our county legislative partners, it is an honor and pleasure to have Governor Cuomo here with us today. I have also would like to extend a warm welcome to Assemblyman Bill Magnarelli, Senator John DeFrancisco, who, along with the governor, will be speaking in a few moments. I'd also like to acknowledge some special guests who are joining us today, including County Executive Joni Mahoney, Mayor Stephanie Miner, the Chairman of the Onondaga County Legislature, Ryan McMahon, somewhere this side, there he is, President of the Common Council, Van Robinson, thank you, Van, Onondaga County Legislative Minority Leader, Linda Irwin, wonderful, and Mayor of the Village of Manoa and President of the NICOM, Richard Donovan. So also to all of our other elected officials who are joining us today, welcome, and thank you for coming. By all accounts, we were just discussing, this has been an incredibly successful session, and New York State government continues to deliver results for the people of this state, as it has been doing for the last 2.5 years. Since taking office, Governor Cuomo has taken bold steps to ensure that our SUNY schools play a key role in revitalizing our state's economy, especially in the upstate region. From his earliest days in office, the governor recognized that community colleges like Onondaga can play a vital role in economic development by creating partnerships with businesses and ensuring a skilled and trained workforce. With the new Startup New York program, the governor has once again leveraged the success of SUNY with location-based tax incentives and public-private partnerships. We applaud your leadership, and all of us here at Onondaga and in Central New York look forward to working with businesses to create economic opportunities for our citizens and, most importantly, our graduates. It's now my pleasure to introduce Assemblyman Bill Magnarelli.
Good afternoon. Wow. Thank you, President O'Connell. It's a pleasure to be with you today, along with my colleague in the Assembly, Al Sturpey, who is here with us. Over the past 2.5 years, the governor is focused on making our state government work for the people of this state, and I think that this past session is proof positive that New York is functioning at a new level. For the first time in my career as a public servant, New Yorkers are seeing a state government live up to its potential. The dysfunction of state government in the past used to be a punchline on late-night comedy shows, but now government is working again. Just over 2 months ago, the governor and the state legislature passed the state's third consecutive on-time budget, a feat that has not been accomplished for 30 years. When you think of the executive budget, typically a lot of zeros and dollar signs and a complicated accounting mechanism comes to mind. But now it has become a symbol of a functioning state government. That's because Governor Cuomo has done what he promised to do, deliver results for the people of New York. Since taking office, Governor Cuomo has also been a true leader on progressive issues, addressing social injustices that still permeate our society. It started in 2011 with the passage of marriage equality, a law that restored New York's legacy as the progressive leader and sparked a national movement. In this year's budget, we made New York fairer for our middle-class working families by raising the minimum wage. This year, we will once again show the rest of the country that New York is the progressive capital of the nation and a beacon of fairness. And at this time, I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague in the New York State Senate, John DeFrancisco.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you see me down there? I'm really here. Let's see. How about now? All right. These are abnormally high podiums. Good afternoon, and I want to welcome Governor Cuomo to the 50th Senate District in Central New York. He's been here many, many times, and he's here for an important announcement today. I also want to mention that my colleague, Dave Valesky, is here as well. He happens to be a Democrat. I'm a Republican, and we share leadership in the Senate. So not only do we get on-time budgets, as Bill Magnarelli mentioned, we also had a unique coalition running the Senate this year, and still there was functionality in government, unlike what it was before Governor Cuomo became governor. In fact, I remember when we first got together with the governor at the mansion, where he indicated everybody benefits if we can work together. And he promoted that concept all the way through these last 2.5 years. And it's clearly working, and that takes leadership. Now, it's no secret that all of us don't agree on everything. You know, I've been married, next 2 weeks from now, it'll be 45 years. My wife and I don't agree. It's been tough. No. My wife and I don't agree on everything either, but I think we've made a good team with the 3 children we have and our 8 grandchildren, and I think there's a good team working here in state government. But with respect to the governor, each year I've watched his State of the State message, and he'll list a laundry list of things that he wants to get done. And at the end of the year, if someone objectively looks at the laundry list, they'll see there's checks at just about every spot that he wanted to get something done. That takes leadership, that takes cooperation. I know we should be doing on-time budgets, but we weren't until the governor came. We closed, as chairman of finance, it used to nauseate me before the governor came, where there'd be multi-billion-dollar deficits that we had to fill, usually with more revenues. The governor, through his leadership, we've closed those multi-billion-dollar deficits. We've made government more accountable. We've conducted ourselves the way we've demanded, and the governor's demanded of localities with a 2% tax cap and spending cap. We've kept that goal, and that's why the government is working again. In fact, this hasn't been publicized very much, but 4 million New Yorkers, middle-class New Yorkers, middle-income New Yorkers, have actually got a tax increase a tax decrease over these last 2.5 years. That hasn't happened in a long, long time. Now, this year he's concentrating on upstate New York, and he's made a big push to get upstate moving again, which hasn't happened in a long, long time. And the most amazing part of what he's done, I think, quite honestly, is that he negotiated with 3 Indian nations where there have been disputes for centuries. Centuries there have been disputes. And he got agreements, to get these agreements, the municipalities will realize millions of dollars that they were foregoing while these disputes were going on. So it's been an incredible 29 months, I believe, and it's going to even get better, I'm sure. So with that said, I want to introduce the governor of the great state of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be back at OCC. It's a pleasure to be with President O'Connell. Let's give her a round of applause for her great leadership. What a nice introduction that was from Senator DeFrancisco. Wasn't that nice? Let's give him a round of applause for a nice introduction. To Senator DeFrancisco, Assemblyman Bill Magnarelli, and Al Sturpey, and Dave Valesky, these are my colleagues in Albany. And I'm going to now take credit for everything that happened during the session. I think it's only fair that I take all the credit because I get all the blame when anything goes wrong. You don't hear them getting the blame. It's always me. But the truth is, the reason we have this product is because we've had a much different way of doing business between the governor's office and the legislature. And John was exactly right. We said to each other 2 years ago, when we were first coming in, and it was a very bad place for the state, we said we have to do something different. And we said, you know what, we're Democrats, we're Republicans, we have our differences, but let's leave the politics at the door, and let's remember that we're New Yorkers first, and let's put that first and foremost, and let's do the people's business, and we have. We don't always agree. We don't always agree on everything, and by the way, we shouldn't always agree on everything. That's where it's so different in a marriage. See, in a marriage, I think you should agree, in an ideal world. I'm divorced, so I really shouldn't be talking about any of this. But in government, the disagreement is not a bad thing. You come from different places, you come from different philosophies, and you're supposed to bring your perspective, and you're supposed to argue. But you're not supposed to allow your perspective and the differences rule the day. And the gridlock that you see in Washington and other governments, that's the enemy. The paralysis is the enemy. Good debate, good discussion, but then put your differences aside. Remember, the people come first, and progress comes first. And that's what we've done in Albany for 2.5 years, and I hope we can say that we do it next year too, because it's hard. And I give the credit, frankly, to my colleagues in the legislature. Me, I'm not so good at putting my differences aside, I'll tell you the truth. But we really have been able to find a way through, and I credit them. And I'd ask them to stand, and let's give them a round of applause for their good work. All the local elected officials who are here, thank you very much for being here. For Rob Simpson, who is the co-chair of the Regional Economic Development Corporation, is doing outstanding work. Let's give him a round of applause and thank him. Steve Aiello, pleasure for you to be here. We just finished the legislative session, which basically goes from January to June. It's the 6 months. Starts in January, where the governor of the state that Senator DeFrancisco referred to, is where the governor lays out the plan, and then we go through the legislative session. It concludes in June, and that's where we are. And what I wanted to do today was to give you an update on basically what we accomplished. As the senator said, when we started 2 years ago, the state was in a bad place because there had been 2 years of dysfunction. You had governors who came and went. You had a lot of scandals. You had a lot of fights between the governor's office and the legislature, and basically nothing was happening. And the state government had become a joke. And it's sad, because this was one of the best state governments in the country for many years, and it really did lead the nation, and now it became a laughing stock. So that's where we started 2 years ago. And over the past 2 years, we've stressed competence and stability and making the place work, and functionality, as the senator said. And that's what I was talking about before. Put your differences aside and make it work. We've passed laws, we've gotten the agencies running, and we have a competent, stable government. We had our own hat trick in recognition to the recent hockey mania. Hat trick, we passed 3 budgets on time in a row. Now you could say that's no big deal. You could say you're supposed to pass a budget on time. You are supposed to pass a budget on time, but Albany never, ever did that. And it became the flashpoint of the dysfunction, because every year you would see the state government get to April 1, which is the deadline to pass a budget, and it wouldn't get the budget done. And it was like a tremendous act of arrogance and chaos that the government had a deadline to pass a budget, and it didn't pass the budget by the deadline. And it was such a disconnection for people, because, you're supposed to pay your taxes. Well, what if you said, I was arguing with my wife, I couldn't figure out how to pay my taxes this year. So not getting a budget done was really the height of the arrogance. And getting it done is the best metaphor we have for the functionality that we've brought. The budgets are hard because that's where the money is, in the budget. And whenever there's money on the table, that's when the decisions break down. That's why you see in Washington, when does it break down? It breaks down when Washington goes to do a budget, because that's where the money is. and we've gotten 3 done on time. We passed the property tax cap. Property taxes are the single toughest tax in the state of New York. It's worse than income tax. It's worse than a business tax. It's the property tax. And we passed a property tax cap that said no more than a 2% increase for local governments or schools. No more than a 2% increase a year unless you get a super majority. Why? Because these property taxes were going up 7, 8, 9, 10% every year. And people just didn't have the money. Nothing was going up 7, 8, 9, 10%. Your income's not going up 7, 8, 9, 10%. Your savings account isn't going up. The value of the house wasn't going up. How could government keep raising the cost on a taxpayer when they had no way to pay? This made a lot of people very unhappy. A lot of the local government officials were very unhappy. Somebody who I like very, very much, and you know very, very well, County Executive Joni Mahoney, called me up. She said, this is very, very tough, this property tax cap. But at the end of the day, over 80% of the local governments followed the property tax cap. Over 95% of the school districts followed the local property tax cap. It has made a tremendous difference all across the state. The one thing everybody agreed to do about public education was to have teacher evaluations, evaluate a school, evaluate a teacher, evaluate a classroom. And we talked about it for years, but we could never get it done because it was controversial. The union had strong opinions. This year, every school in the state of New York will have a teacher evaluation, every classroom, and for the first time we'll be able to tell what teachers are doing well, so they should be rewarded, what teachers have issues that we need to work through, and we can compare schools to find out what's working and what's not working. It's almost amazing when you think about it. All this time, all this money, we spend more money per student than any state in the nation. And we had not a basic performance measure to go by. And now we'll have every school done. That's by the end of this year. We passed marriage equality 2 years ago. We were the first large state to do it. 5 states followed us. Yesterday, the Supreme Court really made history when they struck down DOMA. So in terms of bringing social equality to this state and this nation, we've been doing our part. And we said in this past January, we said we had 2 years of competence and stability, and now we wanted to take it to the next level with New York Rising, and that's what our agenda was all about. We started with twin priorities, twin pistons. For those of you who care, that's actually a V-twin. That's a Harley motor. The state of New York, it doesn't really belong there, but I just put it there. And I thought nobody would notice anyway, so it didn't matter. Social progress and fiscal responsibility. When it comes to social progress, we passed the New York SAFE Act, which was sensible gun control, which made this state a safer state. It was even more important since even after what happened in Connecticut, this nation still didn't pass gun control. We did in the state of New York. It's common sense, background checks to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and people who are mentally ill. An assault weapon ban because assault weapons are unnecessarily dangerous, but we passed this in the beginning of the session and we made New York a safer state. We raised the minimum wage. We raised the minimum wage so people who work full-time can pay rent and can eat. We're making the state of New York cleaner with more investment in environmental protection than ever before. We're one of the first states to become aggressive about putting in a statewide charging system to charge electric cars, but we've done it all in balance with the economy to make sure the economy keeps running and we're creating jobs. In terms of fiscal responsibility, New York is economically stronger. We've capped government spending at 2%, just like we asked our partners in local government to do. And we've lived with that 2% cap. It actually freed up money for us. What did we do with the money? Just what John said. We did a middle-class tax cut, which now the middle class in New York State, defined as $40,000 per year to $300,000. So a very broad definition of middle class up to $300,000 will pay the lowest tax rate in 60 years, believe it or not. 60 years. We have the regional economic development councils that for the first time understand that the economy works in regions in this state. There is no one economy. It's a regional economy. This is what Rob Simpson is the co-chair of. And that has worked extraordinarily well. This competition, each region competes against the other for the best plan. Your region has done very well. Rob has got a big smile here, not because he won, but because he's standing next to Maria Bartiromo. That's why Rob is smiling. And she came and she presented the award. John DeFrancisco standing where he's standing because he wanted to be closer to Maria than Rob Simpson was closer to Maria. But that was great. We have been investing in the SUNY system all along with SUNY 2020, which recognized the asset that the SUNY system is and invested in SUNY to a higher level than ever before. But the focus this year is on the upstate economy, because the upstate economy is a particular problem. And first, I believe you have to be straight and honest in the analysis of a problem, because if you're unwilling to recognize a problem, you're never going to solve it, right? The upstate economy is reacting not just to this recent downturn. This is not just about 2005, 2006. The upstate economy has been struggling for decades. In truth, it never recovered after the shift from manufacturing. And we're dealing with a 20, 30, 40-year economic transition that we're still working our way through. That is the truth. The numbers on the upstate economy have been very bad for a long time. Not only is the upstate economy trailing downstate, New York City, et cetera, over the past 10 years, it's trailing the rest of the nation. Job growth is about 1/2 what the nation was doing. So this is really a crisis, and it has to be addressed as such. And as Senator DeFrancisco said, we've never had just an upstate plan. You know, so much of the legislature comes from downstate, because that's where the population is, that's where the elected officials come from. So much of it is downstate focused that we never really had an upstate priority until this year, where we said we're going to come up with a really comprehensive economic agenda for upstate New York, and that's exactly what we did. The first is a financial restructuring board. Why? Many of these local governments are close to bankrupt or insolvent, and they have structural problems that they've had for a long time that they either can't or don't want to deal with. And rather than do what we do, which is every year the state subsidizes these local budgets that are basically insolvent. Buffalo, 1/3 of the Buffalo budget is state money. 24% of Syracuse's budget is state money. 18% of Rochester, 25% of Yonkers is state money. And then the city says, I have a balanced budget. No, you don't. You really don't. You have the state giving you cash to give you what looks like a balanced budget. But it's not a balanced budget. And it hasn't been for many, many years. And to have a balanced budget, you're going to have to reconcile revenues and expenses. And those numbers have to equal each other. I don't care if you're running a candy store, a shoe store, a household, or a city. The revenues have to meet the expenses. And you can't be reliant on the state to come in here with a check at the end of the year to make up for the shortfall that you can't fill. Because frankly, the state's not in a position to do that anymore. Because we worked very hard to balance our books, but we can't be subsidizing upstate cities year after year after year. What do you have to do? You have to do what you do in a private sector corporation. You'd restructure. You'd go to bankruptcy court. You'd be in bankruptcy court. Bankruptcy judge would come in, and they'd reconcile the finances once and for all, right? That's what we have to do with cities. So we want to put together a financial restructuring board. Senate's on it, Assembly's on it, the Attorney General's on it, the Comptroller's on it. The city comes before the restructuring board, and we'll work with that city to come up with a real restructuring plan. What are your revenues? What are your expenses? Let's make them fit once and for all. What do we have to do? And talk about things that cities don't like to talk about. Maybe a city is not a viable economic unit. Maybe we have to put one city together with another city. Maybe we have to merge a city with a county. We have 10,500 governments in this state. 10,500 governments. We have governments designed at a time when the state was much bigger, especially upstate New York. And what's happening upstate New York, just so we don't kid ourselves, we have a population loss. We have people leaving, and we have government growing. And we have the expense of government growing. So we have fewer and fewer people paying for more and more government. So what happens? The taxes on the remaining people go up. And when the taxes go up on the remaining people, that accelerates those people to leave also. And we are now in that downward spiral. People leaving, fewer people here. People here have to pay more taxes, and they say, I'm leaving too. We have to stop that spiral. We have to stop that trajectory. And we have to reconcile those numbers. And the expenses have to meet the revenues, and we can't keep raising taxes because we're going to lose more and more people. 10,500 governments. Maybe some governments have to be consolidated. Well, I don't want my government to be consolidated. I like the name of my town, and I don't want to have my town. I like having my local police. All right, this is how much it costs to do that. You want to pay higher taxes? No, I don't want to pay higher taxes. Well, then we're going to have to think about something else. It's a hard conversation. It's a difficult conversation, but it's the real conversation. Otherwise, we keep doing what we've been doing for 20 years. Upstate New York is a balloon with a pinhole. And it's just slowly, slowly shrinking, 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 shrinking. And people are leaving, and it's becoming more and more impossible for the people who remain behind. We have to change that dynamic. And this is the first step towards doing it. At the same time, you want to grow the economy. How do we grow the economy? Two ideas that we passed into law this year. Number one, resort gaming destinations. Now, not casinos as casinos. If you just said to me, are you in favor of casinos? I'm not so crazy about casinos. Am I excited about casinos as part of large-scale resorts that can create hundreds and hundreds of jobs and generate an economy for a region? Yes. That I'm interested in. And that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about siting large-scale resort destinations that also have casino gaming, but hotel complexes, tennis courts, convention centers that can really drive a regional economy. We also are talking about siting them upstate. Why? Because I want to get that New York City market north. New York City gets 50 million tourists a year. 50 million tourists coming from all over the world. New York City's doing great as a tourist attraction. I want to say, come visit New York City, go to the Empire State Building, visit, God bless, and then go north. And get people, get that traffic, get that volume coming upstate New York. That means we need the attractions for them. And rather than site a casino in New York City, I said, no, we'll put them upstate and make those some of the attractions that people will actually come upstate to do. We also have casinos all around our borders. So it's not casinos or no casinos. There are casinos. There are casinos in our state already. There are casinos around our state already. The only question really is, do we get those dollars and do we regulate them or not? This is going to be a referendum on the ballot this year. As Senator DeFrancisco mentioned, we also took the opportunity to resolve long-standing problems we had with 3 Indian tribes around the state who we had signed gaming compacts with, but they were not in compliance. They hadn't been for years. We were in court for many, many years. And we signed with the Senecas in western New York, the Oneidas in central New York, and the Mohawks in the North Country. And we now have hundreds of millions of dollars going to local governments that weren't going from those failed agreements. The casinos require a referendum change, and that's going to be on the ballot in November. The colored regions are the regions that would actually compete to cite a casino. You see none in downstate New York, none in the North Country, none in the areas that have Indian compacts. The casino revenues would go to every county in the state, except Joni Mahoney. She's not going to get any money, but that's different. And every county could use the revenue either for property tax relief or for education funding. Third point on the upstate economy. What is the greatest obstacle to economic development in upstate New York? What is the one thing you hear from every businessman, any person on the street? Why are you leaving upstate New York? Why won't you bring your business to upstate New York? They all say the same thing. It's high taxes. They all say the same thing. What would the optimum scenario be? If you had a magic wand and you could say, I want to change the trajectory of the upstate economy, and here's my magic wand, what is the one thing you would do with your magic wand? 0 on the tax rate. That's what this program is all about. That's what this program is all about. And here's the issue. They're leaving the state because of taxes. The high taxes are more of a problem in upstate New York than they are downstate. That's the truth. Downstate, there are compensating factors, and it's more of an issue in upstate New York. Some people say, well, lower taxes for everyone. That's the best idea. We have done that, and we continue to do that. But it is very, very expensive. Tax rate in New York, depending on what your income is, can be 8%, 7%, 6%, somewhere in there. To reduce the income taxes 1 point, from 8 to 7, costs $6 billion. $6 billion is a tremendous amount of money. In all of our 3 budgets, we've never had $6 billion. But it would be $6 billion just to go from 8 to 7. If you wanted to go from 8 to 6, it would be $12 billion. Those are impossible numbers for us. Why? Because to drop it 1 point, you have to reduce everyone statewide. And most of the people live in downstate, in Manhattan. I don't want to reduce the taxes on people in downstate. This is an upstate plan. So I don't want to pay for an upstate economic development plan to reduce the taxes in downstate. And by the way, if you went from 8 to 7, it still doesn't help you. If you went to 6, it's still not going to help you. Why? Because they're leaving upstate New York to go to Florida, to Texas, to the Carolinas. You have states that have no income tax. So your competition really is 0. That's what the competition is. Some businesses say, well, hold on a second, if I'm now running a business and a neighboring business comes in from another state and they don't pay taxes, maybe I'm at a disadvantage. First of all, that's not really what this program is designed to do. This program primarily is designed to keep the jobs we create. Jobs nowadays are being created from higher education facilities in this state, all around this country. We create the new jobs. Why? Because we have great schools and we have great young minds. But 75% of the new jobs we create leave by the end of the first year. 75% of the new jobs leave by the end of the first year. That is a devastating statistic. Why do they leave? High taxes. Venture capital funds will come in and invest, pick them up like a potted plant, and bring them to a different location with low taxes because they're young and they're mobile and they can be moved. That's what we have to stop. We have the schools, we have the young people, we have to come up with an answer to the high taxes so they stay and they grow. This program says no new taxes for 10 years. Why? Because we believe at the end of 10 years they'll be rooted. End of 10 years, you get married, you buy a house, your kids are in the schools, you're rooted, you're in a community. It's not so easy to pick up and leave at the end of 10 years. We want to take the SUNY system, 64 universities, 55 in upstate New York, and make the SUNY system entrepreneurial tax-free communities. Nice and simple. We'll also apply it to private campuses who can apply for up to 3 million square feet of the same entrepreneurial community. When we say tax-free, what do we mean? We mean tax-free. No business taxes, no sales taxes, no property taxes, no franchise fees, no income taxes for the owners or the employees. Any businesses coming in from out of state, we have an anti-competition provision that SUNY has to make sure that any business that comes in to qualify is not going to be in competition with any other business that is in the region, to make sure we're not giving anyone a competitive advantage. When you add up the total amount of square feet available, it comes out to 120 million square feet. What does that mean? Is that a lot of space or is that a little space? That is more commercial space than is in San Francisco and Philadelphia combined. It's more commercial space than is in Rochester, Buffalo, and Syracuse combined. This is not a boutique program, my friends. This is not a little niche market. This is a major amount of commercial space that can fundamentally change the trajectory of the upstate economy. It is that large an area. We needed a big change. We needed a big move. Because as I said, the numbers are not good and they haven't been good for a long time, and it's not about tweaking on the margins. You need to fundamentally change the dynamic, and you need a game changer of an economic program, and I believe this is it. If you can get the liability out of the equation, if you can get the high tax problem away, you're going to win. Why? Because we have so many assets in upstate New York. It's just the high taxes are like trying to swim with an anchor around your neck. You resolve that high tax issue, you're going to see upstate New York take off. Because all those people who are leaving, they really don't want to leave. You talk to them at the airports, talk to the young people when they're getting on a plane. They're not saying, I want to leave. They're saying, I have to leave. My wife's job moved. I have to move to get a job. I can't afford the taxes. I can't pay the property taxes. Not that they want to, because you're in the best state in the nation. There's no state you could possibly want to be in besides the state of New York. No taxes, and New York is going to win. Yeah, those other states have no taxes, but then you have to live in the other states, and nobody wants to do that. We take care of this problem, you're going to see the numbers in upstate New York turn around. We said in January that we were going to come up with a plan that accelerated the progress of this state, and I believe we're doing just that. Now, something came up between January and June, because it can never be easy. And between January and June, you probably saw in the newspaper there was a rash of scandals in the legislature. And you had a handful of legislators who did possibly illegal or unethical, or the technical word is certainly stupid things that they did. And this is important to us because these stories have shaken the public's trust. And I believe that any relationship is only as good as the level of trust. I don't care if it's husband and wife, I don't care if it's friends. It is only as good as the level of trust. And that's also true for government. The relationship is only as good as the citizens trust the government. And if the citizens don't trust the government, then the power of the government is limited. And I understand why people's trust is shaken after seeing these stories. It's also not reflective of the truth. Yes, you have a handful of bad legislators. But I am telling you, the overwhelming number of legislators are good, smart, earnest people who are there for the right reason and doing the right job. But I want to make sure the people of this state know it, and I want to make sure that we restore the trust. I'm going to impanel a governor's commission to investigate public corruption. The governor has power under a law called the Moreland Act, 1907, to appoint an investigatory committee, because I want the people of the state to know that the safeguards are in place. To the extent people did bad things, they will be punished. But we have the right safeguards, we have the right precautions. I'll have a commission of the best law enforcement people from across the state, Democrats and Republicans, because I want you to know the government is 100% trustworthy. Because I don't want the momentum that we've developed over the past 2 years to be abated. And frankly, I don't want you to paint that entire legislature with a broad brush, because it doesn't deserve it. And I think this commission will tell the truth and find out to the extent there was wrongdoing, and then we'll move on. This agenda will do, I believe, what we said it was going to do in January 2013. We're going to take the progress of the first 2 years and we're going to take it to a new level. We're going to get that upstate economy running the way it should be running, and we're going to take the harness off the upstate economy. We're going to help those local governments become honest and solvent and make sure they're economically viable for the next generation. And we're going to take this state to a level that it hasn't been at before. Because at the end of the day, what it's all about, Democrat, Republican, upstate, downstate, this is our state. This is our home state. And we all have one obligation as a citizen, as a parent, to leave this place a better place than we found it. To leave our home a better home for our children than we found it. That's what it's all about, and together we're going to do it. Thank you, and God bless you.